Welcome, everyone. And Paul made it in here just in time. Want to welcome everybody here. It's going to be a fun topic. We're going to be talking today about when sales meet service, sometimes also referred to as the Hatfield and McCoys. So as we're running through this, if you have any questions, if you would, please put them in and we will answer any of those questions that we can at the end. So my name is Dan Martin. And we're joined here with InBay and Virtual Help Desk Live, bringing this together. And so go ahead, and I'm the Director of Operations here at CharTec, and want to introduce Paul and Anthony. So Paul, since you're first on this, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and InBay?
Thanks, Dan. Hi, everyone. My name's Paul Fuge. I'm the Head of Sales for InBay. I'm based in the south of England, here in the UK. And we work alongside both Dan and Anthony. And I've been involved in a variety of commercial roles in the tech world for probably around the last 10 years or so, culminating in the position I hold today. And I've been in the role of an MSP account manager. I've had a go at a kind of new business, net new business sales as well as managing a team. So that's given me lots of insight, I guess, into some of the really into the good, the bad, and the ugly, really, of the sales world and of the interaction that we have to have with both our customers and our colleagues as well. So hopefully, I can bring some insight today to the fun and games that we can have when onboarding.
Awesome. So Anthony, tell us a little bit about you and Live VHD. You're muted still. Sorry.
I wasn't before. All right. So hi there. My name is Anthony Woods. I'm the VP of Operations at Live Virtual Help Desk. I've been with the company almost since inception, right from teching on the floor to help desk manager, account manager, and now VP of Operations. Obviously, growing with the company, I've got to watch and have a hand in how the operations are handled and how we interact with our partners. Before that, I was with a managed service provider, worked as the general manager there. So I too kind of seen both sides of the outsource coin, which I believe really helps me understand and help that fit and make sure that fit works for almost everyone. Live Virtual Help Desk has been outsourcing help desk for 11 years and NOC for about 9. So InBay being our NOC partner right now, obviously. So we're your one point of contact for both those services, and obviously both companies are involved with onboarding, best fit, tools, and all those good things.
Awesome. So thank you very much. So we're going to go ahead and jump in, and so we've brought Anthony and Paul on to be able to help with some of these, some of these little idiosyncrasies that we have, things that come up in the process of onboarding. And also, we always get to, it's always great to have this conversation because, we get to pick on the staff or on the salespeople, right? So, we got the salesperson here, so we can throw a few punches, right?
I'm looking forward to it.
All right. So one of the, we have this challenge when we're not aligned, and we get the deal, everything's great. Now we've got all of these challenges that come in when sales is trying to hand over, sales sold something, now service is left with left to deliver it, right? And so that's really what we're going to be talking about is this interaction, the things that we need to do, because when we don't do this well, obviously we've got that high frustration, that low morale. All of our techs are upset, with what they got handed. Our salespeople are upset, because they felt it should have been, done differently. And, we start to lose staff. We don't have a good reputation, lost revenue, and lost clients. So this is why I think it should be pretty obvious why we have to have a good process, but we're going to go ahead and dig into that. All right. So what do we need to do to make sure that we have the, that best experience for our customers and for our staff? First off, we have to understand what the customer's business is, right? So, so Anthony, tell me a little bit about that. We'll come back to Paul here in a second, but why does the technical staff need to understand the business?
Well, understanding the business, obviously, you're going to maybe guide your discovery and your investigation into what the customer's needs are right from the beginning of the sales process. So you're going to address a doctor's dentist's office differently than you're going to address a mortgage broker or a government agency or what have you. So obviously you're going to gain that experience having those customers already or doing some research before going in there. So, a doctor's going to have a medical record software where, the government's going to maybe have a different in-house ticketing system that you're going to want to look into, all those great things. Even before you're asking them where their pain points are and what services they're looking for from a provider, you're going to find out before you even meet with them what that conversation might be.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to add anything to that, Paul, before we talk about how the team works?
Absolutely. I think on a sort of a more human level, I think understanding the customer's needs is really crucial, because actually, in the kind of holistic discussion around a customer and their business and what they do, there's actually people involved, and the realities of that situation is that actually there's stakeholders that have invited you into their domain with a specified aim. Now, it's really, really important as a salesperson initially, and an account manager, on an ongoing basis, that you understand what those requirements are. So you can help them achieve the goals and the needs that they desire. But B, that you as an outsourced help are not overstepping the mark and potentially, in some instances, making them feel like their position is potentially under threat. So actually understanding the kind of human element and maybe sometimes some of the internal politics that can exist with our prospects and our customers is actually quite crucial, particularly when I always think from an account management standpoint, you become the composer of the orchestra, and so the ability to communicate some of those internal personality traits and politics can sometimes be really, really crucial to ensuring that everybody understands what sensitivities are within an organization.
Yeah. And we're going to kind of dig into a lot of these a little bit further, but that team does need to understand sometimes certain types of organizations, they take it very personally if you call them a company versus a firm, or are they partners or are they employees? Those can definitely cause you some problems.
Even people's job titles, it sounds maybe trivial to some, but can be quite sensitive to others.
Yeah, absolutely. And so obviously we're going to get a lot of information, and we really need to understand what a failure is going to mean to that customer, right? So we have the assumption that maybe if a server fails, that's a big thing, but if this media server is just running iTunes, doesn't really matter. But depending on that business, we need to know what's it going to look like for them, so we understand really the what are those components that we have to watch out for, right? All right, so the bad news, it is hard to break even when you're onboarding, right? So why is that, Anthony?
Well, one, people don't want to pay for an onboarding, particularly. They're going to wonder why they don't have instantaneous service from when you walk out the door with a signed agreement, etc. So generally speaking, there's costs to fulfill that aren't necessarily something that the end client is going to be remiss to pay. So. Yeah, and this is really where sales is really important too, right? So, what is that assumption, as Anthony was saying, right? Hey, we signed the contract, my people are calling you now. Right? So what does sales have to do on that?
I think really it's crucial to ultimately set expectation. And what I've found is good salespeople actually can use a scenario like this to actually help them bring in the business in the first place. So actually using onboarding processes and onboarding dates, for example, as a great way of closing business and actually creating a degree of urgency with the organization they're working with. And I think what that goes back to also is ultimately that then helps buy you some kind of leverage in the event that actually, because I'm sure, we can't see faces here, but I'm sure there might be some nodding heads here that we've all worked with customers who delay, and then say, oh, we need it done yesterday. So the good salesperson actually in that scenario is often in much more control than maybe the bad one who hasn't maybe articulated the processes that are required as part, as part of the onboarding process.
Mm-hmm. So Anthony, have you ever had the previous IT company kind of do everything they can to screw you over?
every time. And generally speaking, it's more from apathy than anything coming from anything ignorant. It's just the fact that they're assuming that the service is already going somewhere else, that they have money to save at other clients. So generally speaking, if they've already, any company can relate to this. You've already got lost revenue that's leaving in 3 weeks. So you better make sure that you're keeping the ones you have. So whether that's a healthy mentality or not, it's one that people do have. So, and we'll get to that. And a lot of the in-house KBs are something that aren't readily shareable either. So It's not like you're doing a glue connect to the next MSP because you're just a bro that way, right? So doing an export or getting around to that, a lot of times you're not going to get that from someone because A, they don't want to, and B, there might not be a mechanical way to do that.
It's going to cost them money.
They might just hate it. Yeah, and they might just hate it too. They might actually just have feelings about it.
I think the other thing is, guys, is nowadays people are very protective on data, aren't they? So I think actually when it comes to handing over to another organisation or extracting something from a previous IT company, it's a big challenge, because actually people are very sensitive to that. I think it's naturally human nature as well that these kind of things don't play out brilliantly. I saw quite an ironic article the other day which talked about the fact that a plumber is never going to come into your home and say, wow, the guy that did the last job did such a great job here, and because that's almost not human. Most people come in and shake their head and have a concerned look on their face. So it's sort of human nature, isn't it, that the relationship between the previous incumbent and you as the onboarding MSP is going to probably be a slightly fractious one because essentially you've taken their business.
Yeah. And, one of those other things, because, they're not necessarily trying to make your life easy, there's oftentimes we can have some of those landmines that the customer didn't know about, right? They weren't trying to hide it, but they just didn't know. And, they find out, that maybe that application that only needs to be used once a year, or, a couple of times a year, those are the things that are going to come and surprise us later on, right?
Absolutely.
This would also apply to in-house people as well that are leaving. So obviously not just incumbent MSPs, but also the people that are in-house.
Absolutely. So a couple things we have to make sure of, right? The standard offering. Had a friend of mine in a peer group, and we always used to joke about him. He would allow we called him, he was the Henry Ford of the IT world. So you could have any color you wanted as long as it was black. And so his ruthless consistency in standardization I've never seen anybody who has gone that far. But I've also never seen anybody who has the same profit margins that he has. So, in defining your standards, right? So this is what you're doing. So, how easy is it for you to support 15 different firewalls, or the firewall of the month, or all the different idiosyncrasies between workstations? It's really, really critical.
I think from a sales perspective, guys, as well, the reality is that organizations look, when I use a law firm, I look to them to come to me with advice on how to position things, or how to go about what I'm asking them to do. And I think actually it's recognizing that as MSPs, we work with lots of very clever people, but actually in a lot of instances, they're looking to us and to you for help. So actually sometimes having a standardized offering and, minimizing the number of choices available is actually probably quite empowering to them, because they're looking for you to go in and actually make the recommendations that are relevant to them. So, you guys are the tech experts. Hopefully that's comforting to them when you're able to get on the front foot and tell them what you need, what you think they need.
Yeah. Got your standardization. Any comments you want to make on that, Anthony, before we kind of?
Well, just one caveat: that standardization with the flexibility to rope-a-dope with the opportunity. So you may walk away with nothing if you're telling people you must buy this, you must buy that. Like you said, you're surprised that going that far with the standardization, that this person was able to get buy-in with that. I think that would be more patience than anything, because he's going to walk away from more deals than he's going to land because of that. So having those alternatives in place just in case. So what if they won't go with the standardized $2,000 firewall? What they have is fine until they do blank. So having those options as well, without giving too much on the yard, final yard line either.
Sure. So, you also have a defined sales process. It has to be something that is a reproducible, process, right? So you don't just come in and kind of wing every sale, right?
Without question. And I think, the sales process, has to be defined right from that initial standpoint of how, of actually gathering the intel in the first place around the client. So actually using, good qualification, which I think is actually going to assist in generating the sale in the first instance. But then also, even at the pre-sale stage, we, for example, will talk through the organizations we work with, information around what they can expect from the post-sale stage. So we have, for example, net new business guys, and then people who are responsible for account management alongside a technical partner success team. And we'll use that as a way of selling the experience to the customer at the point at which we're looking to sell to them, because we feel that that's a defined process which can hopefully give them some comfort that Mr. New Business, who loves to go out and meet new people and talk to lots of businesses and go to events and sell, is not going to be the guy they're trying to get hold of in 3 months' time when they've got a tech issue, because they've got an account manager and some tech support that actually they know by name and that they can call and they have the direct dial for. So there's been some kind of thought process around how we're going to A, get these people in the first place, but B, onboard them and then give them some comfort that actually we don't just hear from them when they've got something to moan about. So we have an ongoing, proactive and hopefully positive relationship.
Yeah. And CharTec has a lot of information up on Core and in our academies on the sales process. And every time we're talking with one of our customers, one of our members about, something that failed in the sale, it's usually something, we're going to find which piece of the process that they, just decided not to do or forgot about or skipped over. And that's really what leads to that loss of the sale.
I completely agree.
Yeah. All right. So you have to really understand what your roles are. I think that kind of goes without saying. And then, of course, you have a process for onboarding, not a winging it. So we've got a bunch of people who need to be involved in this, right? So all the way from the very beginning of what's our marketing message, what's our sales process that we were talking about. You have sales engineers in addition to your sales people. You've got the technical aspect between your sales and your service and projects. But you have to make sure that you've got everybody involved from the beginning. Otherwise, you're going to end up at the end and you're going to have a mess.
Absolutely. And this is actually a great visual for this as well, because even though these are set up between different teams, these teams have to be involved from the beginning to the end, like you said, and knowing when to pick up the ball and when to put it down. And this isn't necessarily something that there's the best way to do it, but there is the best way to do it for each project. So your project manager is going to be overseeing that. They're going to be getting, reports from the sales engineer before that handoff is done. So before a project manager is reaching out, they have the whole story. They know what's been promised. They know what they're implementing, and they know what questions to ask if there's still some gray area around a few options.
Excellent.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the key thing for me is always I always like for the first meeting to involve everyone. So the new business person, the account management, project manager, because for a couple of reasons. One, because the new business guy might have given away something that, that actually needs to be known about. It might be, we've seen some instances where actually that process hasn't taken place and their customer uses it as a way of exploiting it to say, oh no, Anthony said we could have this, or, and again, the customer isn't always right. So actually in those situations, having everybody in the room and making sure that actually what's been discussed and what's been solved is ultimately delivered is a great starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So that is the very first thing we need to know. Right? We've got to understand what has been sold. So we've got kind of four key factors that tie right into where Paul was talking about. What did we sell them? And, what were the expectations that were set? We have to make sure that, that salesperson, the technical operations people during the handover as well, right? So with the customer, it's, as Paul was saying, you've got everybody who's involved who's going to be servicing the customer from the beginning as well as at the end. Who are those people who are going to be affected by change, right? Because we are going to be making changes in their environment, otherwise they wouldn't have needed us, correct? And then what's in scope, what's not in scope, and then our sign-off. Now, this is one thing, so sales may not like this, but for me, I'm not going to be paying commission until that scope has been finalized, delivered, and signed off by the customer, right? That's when commission gets paid, because there's no way to job cost it until the end of the day. So it makes this where we have everybody in, sales and service now can be a little bit closer to making sure that, yes, this is what we agreed to. This is the scope of work. We can't allow that scope to be creeping, because that's going to be affecting the profitability of this onboarding, which is then going to affect the commission payout.
And I think you find that salespeople like me are very fickle on this front, on the basis that I once didn't agree with what you just said there, but now, funnily enough, as the head of sales, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very key to keep track of these things as they go, because walking out of the boardroom, well, in the past, walking out of the boardroom and knowing that you've got the deal to when the deal actually starts the project onboarding and going live, many options may have changed. Opportunities may have come up and needs may have gone away. So having that scope is something that you want to keep track of along the way and make sure that everything's in there at the end. And the very beginning of this card here is key to that, meaning everybody is involved. So making sure that, like you said, the sales project and implementation team are all on the same page all along the way, so that we're not having somebody saying, but you gave me this, even after there's a scope document signed, because it'll happen.
For sure. It's kind of like the whether it's expectations versus reality. We could also label this about, what my engineers think they did versus what my customer thinks the engineer did. A couple different ways, right? But we do have to make sure that we are that we are delivering and that we are setting those expectations. We've agreed to those expectations. All right, so where do we mess this up? Right, I think the number one place that we mess up is this very first one, right? Communication. And this is communication with our clients. This is communication internally, with sales, all the way around. When we fail in communications is the first place. And when we fail in communications, we're not defining what our next steps are. And so if we haven't defined our next steps, what is left to be done and who needs to do it, we again run into communication problems, and we're not on the same page. And when we're not on the same page, then our expectations are kind of misaligned, and then our customers start to lose emotion. And we're going to be talking about this a little bit later, but they signed the deal, they're excited. We want to keep that moving, right? We have to make sure they understand we are going to have hard times, but we don't want to have those hard times before we've even gotten going.
Absolutely. And what's even worse than frustration and anger from a customer, in my experience, is apathy. If we get to the point where actually they're almost, kind of shrugging their shoulders about the scenario that they find themselves in, then actually that's not really that's not a great way for a relationship to progress. And I can think of many examples of, being involved in MSPs in the past where we've had very angry customers, who we've managed to turn around because of their general level of passion to articulate the issues, but then work with you to make it better.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's kind of dig into that sales and project meeting. We alluded to that earlier, and what do we need to do in that meeting? So who needs to be there? We talked about that. Right? So who needs to be there, Paul?
So from my perspective, the person that's been involved in the original sale has to be at that initial meeting, as well as the person that's then going to manage the account from an ongoing perspective moving forwards. The project manager or whoever's responsible for delivering the onboarding project also needs to be there, along with any relevant stakeholders from the client's perspective as well. So, and I think the key element there, we talked a little bit about some of the human sensitivities, but I think what's important there, sometimes the person that actually was responsible for essentially delivering the project or delivering the purchase of the project at the sales stage is perhaps not the person that's ultimately going to be responsible or ultimately going to perhaps live or die by the success of the ultimate delivery. So again, I'm getting all those people in the room, outlining what's been delivered, and then getting a feel for actually what people are trying to achieve, both in terms of a technical level, but actually on that kind of slightly more human level is a crucial part of what you're looking to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on the human level, I'll basically say what you said earlier, Paul, and that's the fact that the people doing these roles tend to have particular personalities. So if you have the salesperson going in there and being, amiable and making friends with these people, and you're passing off this project to people that are more technical, more structured, to keep that engagement with the people, the stakeholders, as you say, having those salespeople still involved, because a lot of times, not necessarily the project manager, but some of the staff that are going to be implementing some technical things during the onboarding, during the implementation phase, are there and they'll answer questions. They're not necessarily there making friends and being happy to be around. So having that sales keep that emotional engagement throughout the entire process is great too. And we joke about it, but there is that divide between sales projects and guys in the field. They're doing what they're doing because their lives and personalities led them there. I think pretty much everybody could agree, hey, you know what, the guys in the pit are different from the guys on the phones, they're different from the guys out in the front lines, right? So keeping everybody involved, you're going to have that familiarity when it's done, and everybody's going to know what their next steps are.
Yeah, and you've got to have that meeting, between the sales and the support and projects before you have it with the customer, right? So you've got to make sure that because you have that opportunity now to find some things that might have gotten missed. Hopefully we're at that point, because your first couple onboardings, or as you're doing onboardings, this is usually where people really do have a lot of failure, is because it can be difficult. And so if we're not really making sure that we've got all the communication, the support people are going to be asking some questions of the sales that maybe they had missed up front. And now we can hash it out and figure out what we're going to do before we're sitting there in front of the customer and the customer asks a question that we weren't ready to respond to. So it is really important that you have that opportunity to kind of, you've looked at the proposal, you've seen the Visio diagrams, you may identify some things at that point, ask a question like, hey, we missed this. So we can do that before we, sit in front of the customer with everybody and look like an idiot. Because we definitely don't want that. All right, so now we know what we're supposed to do, and we've kind of had that initial handoff between sales, and now we want to talk about how do we welcome these customers. I think this is, one of those things where we do have a failure. Oftentimes, we don't welcome the customer. Right? We just start answering phones, delivering service. What do you do, Paul?
Well, it's really interesting from that perspective, because actually I remember a while ago in a previous role, they made this sort of comparison with what it's like when you get something like an iPhone and you get the packaging, and it feels like an experience, doesn't it? When you get if you get something new, if you get a new car or, something like that. So actually, by comparison, perhaps tech companies like ours perhaps haven't been quite so good at doing this. Clearly, the ultimate engagement is key initially. What we then also do as part of that is provide some kind of a welcome pack. We also use that as an opportunity to actually start mapping out the next few months and beyond in terms of the relationship that we want to keep moving forward. As I said earlier, it's never a great relationship if the only time you ever speak to your clients are when they're not very happy about something. So actually we try and make sure we're on the front foot and make sure we then have an agreed sort of schedule of interaction with the customer, which I guess from our perspective allows us to show them that we've done this before, and it hopefully brings them some level of comfort that we're not looking to sell them something and then hide and keep our fingers crossed. But it also, from our perspective, from an internal perspective, it gives my account manager the opportunity to be on the front foot. And actually, if we do introduce a new service, sell it in there. We can go and tell them about it in these meetings, which allow us to be proactive and set the agenda and be on the front foot in terms of what we're talking about. There will always be issues. It's IT, so there will always be times when we have to check the temperature and it's not very good, and we have to be on the back foot and deal with those issues. But if that's part of an ongoing process and doesn't feel like a big event when something goes wrong, then for us that's a much smoother way of management over a period.
Right. I think company swag is a important thing, and what is that company swag? Right. So everybody goes, everybody collects all their various company things, but having your contact information on it, it's sitting on their desk. It's those things that they're going to, always carry around. It keeps you top of mind. And I think it's, being able to have the accessibility to your support process. I like that being a part of that swag, and, making sure that every single person has it. I think this is really key. Oftentimes, people may, send a gift or something that we'll talk about later to the CEO, but what are you doing for each of those individual people? This is the human element. Every single person is important, and we need to make sure that they know exactly how to get support. They know, they've got that quick guide of the, frequently asked questions, how to get support, what times can they get support, what to do in case of an emergency, and making that for every employee. Somebody had asked, kind of sent a note in about, what about the home office? Well, I think it's even more important now that we are doing that welcome box, kind of that shock and awe. It's worth putting a little bit of money into that box where people are going to have that in their office and, at their home office now. Also, we've seen some of those things that, that their kids may enjoy. And, so we can, whether they're toys, yo-yos, different things that is always going to be a constant reminder of what we are doing.
Sure. And I just wanted to add one thing here too. You have the quick guide FAQ sheet. There's a few things around that. It just made me think of something actually. But when you're starting the relationship, you're going to want to do a few things. You're going to want to set a live date. So if you're sending out an FAQ sheet, you want to set expectations based on how you're doing your services, real-time services, and what your SLAs are, et cetera. So, you want to encourage people to email in the issues that aren't that big of a deal that can happen today or tomorrow, and you want them to call regarding things. You may even spell those things out. If you, like I said earlier, if you're looking at a lawyer's office, they're going to have different issues than a doctor's office, than a mortgage broker. So spelling out those particular things that you might want to do, you're going to keep your SLAs better if they know what SLAs they're getting for what requests. And also the fact that if they know that I can't phone them before December 27th, then they know when they phone today and the phone number goes to a black hole or goes to a recording or what have you, that they shouldn't have expected that service in the first place. So, but being able to have the confidence to set that live date as well, because you will be pressured to have it yesterday versus having it at a time. Because if you are taking over for an incumbent or for somebody who quit in-house or what have you, that need may be high, but it might not be successful if you give into that need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you want to make sure they understand, what that change is going to be. We talked about that a little bit earlier. Are they going to have downtime, and what is that expectation of downtime? And keeping an eye if you do have a physical location. Things may have changed since you were there last, or you may see things differently. So every time you're there, you want to make sure that you are keeping an eye on what's going on, and don't just assume that it's going to be the same as it was before. All right, so now we're going to begin the prep work. So what are we going to do in our implementation strategy? What is our implementation strategy?
Right.
What are we going to do?
Well, whatever those needs came up to be, you've already had your meetings, you've had your on-site, you've had your discovery, you've had your KB gathering, you know what your needs are. Again, I'm going to stress, having a schedule for these things that these people are expecting. One thing that I love to have our account managers do as well is set the expectation that we're having our onboard call on a certain day. We are going to have a follow-up 1 week after that. It sets it sets a solid deadline on both sides to have things done. So if we have this implementation strategy to produce still for the client, you know that you're doing it a week Friday because you had your onboarding call today. So you can schedule meetings internally around that, and they can be ready for you. And also sending out a nice reminder for the follow-up meeting is good too, because that might light a little bit of a fire the day before so that they're ready to do that. So the implementation strategy isn't just necessarily, hey, we got to be in there on the 27th to install a new firewall and make sure that these ports are open. It's got to be the fact that everybody's on board for every stage of that implementation.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think as the second point sort of highlights, it's making it sort of a collaborative approach. So actually, I guess where possible, giving, getting as much approval or getting as much feedback and input from the client themselves to make sure that it actually fits with them. Again, going back to those personal sensitivities, there's not going to be a key stakeholder within the business who actually got a major bit of work going on over the weekend that you're deciding to onboard, for example. So actually, that all of these things actually really come back to quite simplistic words, which like communication. So actually making sure that actually there is a degree of positive communication. So everyone's aware on both sides what everybody's trying to achieve.
Yep. And you want to look out for some of those things that could halt it, right? So you may have issues with maybe you need physical access or, access codes. You can't continue if you don't get those access codes before a certain date. If you can't access the building physically, right? You're going to have some of those different elements that could put you off of your timeline. You want to make sure that you have those things documented so that you're not left holding the bag. And your checklist. I think we've mentioned a couple times, you do have a checklist, right? Everybody, you should have a checklist for everything that you're doing, the power of the checklist. So, we're going to have a checklist for everything that we're going to do in our pre-project, right? In the sales, our discovery. What do we need to do for discovery? What do we need to do when we're initiating our project? What's our planning? What's our execution? What's our closing? And so this is just kind of a very, kind of a simplistic version of what you're going to need to have in that project planning. And every one of these things, if you're using ConnectWise or your PSA, all these should be a part of that system where you can keep track of everything that's needed to be done.
Ends up being quite a good audit tool as well to actually, so for those that have gone really, really well, you could probably go through and actually just tick the boxes and say, well, actually, yeah, we did deal with that, didn't we? Whereas chances are those that maybe didn't, there was either a spanner was thrown in the works from the customer side, or maybe there was something that for whatever reason was missed. So by having and I'm sure many of you sitting here listening today have got great experience of doing this over the years. So by developing those lists and continually kind of adapting them based on the things you learn from the good and the bad, I'm sure it will be helpful moving forwards.
Yeah, because there's really no way. It kind of goes back to how do you make money as an MSP? You make money by being able to do the same thing over and over, to be able to have a repeatable process. That's why I say I don't like having superheroes. I don't want a superhero because they fly in, do all kinds of stuff, and they're saving the day. But the problem is that's not repeatable. They're unicorns. So I want people who can, we want to be able to execute a process. We want to define a process and then execute that every single time repeatedly. And that's going to give us that, that initial reality versus expectation. It's going to be the same every time. And I think that consistency is just as critical as excellence. All right. So this, we have a lot of things that are changing right now in the age of, do we have people on site or doing things at home? How are we getting equipment to them? It's amazing how many times though we do see people who are, they're taking all the boxes of computers and they haven't pre-configured everything, right? You've got to get all this stuff done ahead of time. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do that to make sure that you've got as many things as possible already done. So when you're on site, you're not going to be there for days, sitting in their office. You want to make sure that you're being able to spend time in the office is going to be as short as possible, right? I say I need two things in the field. I either need a screwdriver or a suit. So I don't want engineers spending a lot of time sitting out there. I want a lower level tech, and I want people who can, who can actually have that conversation with the customers and be that personal aspect.
And there is a lot of perception around when you are on site as well. So if you're there for a day and you accomplish a lot, it looks a lot different than being there a week and they're not sure what you're doing.
Exactly.
I think the other danger really of being anytime you're on site is the while you're here questions and the while you're here help requests, which are much harder to deflect and turn away from, and can be a real thief of your time. So actually, but as the guys say, minimize it. Being really structured about the work you do, the prep you do really off site before you go to a customer site. Everybody loves to see their IT support on site, and it's very comforting to see that. Like seeing policemen on the streets, it's probably very comforting to see. But it's important that that's rationalised to a degree, so you don't end up, I don't want to say wasting time, but you don't end up getting time that you hadn't planned for being used on those extra bits.
Yeah. And so then you've got to get your, update your documentation, getting all that stuff, so what are the kinds of things that you need? Why do we care about this stuff?
Why do we care about this stuff? Well, it's where inevitably that's where the service comes from, right? So obviously, you're going to want to know all of these things, but you're also going to want to know how it fits your internal processes on how these things get done. And you'll find out really quickly where the gaps are as well. So you don't want to have lackluster services out of the gate because you don't have that information to fill the need, and that gap is too large to keep consistent service.
Right. I think also from a purely account management perspective moving forwards, having the correct documentation allows, again, going back to that whole communication piece of setting expectation, actually the more information you have about an organization and maybe their device types and their system, the operating system age, the better you're going to be able to set expectations as to how well we can help them. And so and in some ways, again, it can be the difference between a client really being a great opportunity or a real millstone around the neck of an organization, of an MSP, because the correct communication at the early stages can actually help you over time set expectation that, do you know what, it probably is going to be a bit of a challenge in the early days, but we really think we can turn you around, and using that as an opportunity to then go and upsell better tech in the future. Obviously not doing that can actually put the focus all of a sudden on the MSP, because the expectation maybe from the customer's perspective is, we thought that from day one this was going to be wonderful, and actually you're now not delivering what we thought you were going to. So having all of having as much of this information as early as possible to enable from a sales perspective, account management perspective, expectations to be set is I think quite important.
Yeah, and there's nothing worse than the customer saying, you're trying to get some information. They say, well, you should have this. You're our IT provider. It's like, yeah, you're probably right. I should, but now you're searching through notes or whatnot. We have here about the out of hour support. This is something that's going to start way at the beginning. You're going to be documenting it here as well, but this conversation comes up way at the beginning. And actually, I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and they say, okay, we've got this customer. We're now looking at, they're requiring 24 hours, 24/7 support. How do we do 24/7 support? And I said, very, very simple. Either you provide it for all your customers, and you're going to really staff up, and you don't have the staffing, or you're going to call InBay. And that's how you fix this problem, because it's a huge jump to go into true, because that was the quote, true 24/7 support. It's a pretty big step to make.
I think what's really interesting for us as well, we still speak to MSPs that have these great client relationships where 24/7 support or out of hours support hasn't really ever been properly discussed. Almost like when couples who get together and don't really discuss how they're going to bring up their children. It's one of those things that actually is really considered. The customer probably thinks they have it, and the MSP thinks the customer hasn't got it. And so when a weekend call comes in all of a sudden, and maybe the head of the tech director or somebody's got to step out of a family occasion or something like that to go and deal with the issue. Maybe there's no SLA for the customer. the MSP themselves is having a poor experience of the situation and probably not really making any money from it. So all in all, collectively, it's probably an unsatisfactory scenario for everyone concerned. So by getting it up on the table, by having a solution, and hopefully by working with somebody like ourselves, you can deliver a great SLA. You can deliver something that's scalable, and something that also gives organisations the opportunity to make sure their best guys are available during the working week.
Yep. And then finally, make sure that we've got all the vendor information, right? So especially your line of business, you've got all your vendor information, and so that's going to be that kind of that last thing in that prep work. Okay, so now we've got our job walk. We talked about this before. We have our implementation timeline. Now we're going to follow that, and we have to follow it very, very closely. Anthony was talking about that before. You're setting those expectations right up front. If you're not following it, you are setting up a bad, a bad precedent for your customer. I think this is also, when we're going through the customers, we're working at the customers, the pictures is really, really important. So, again, right now, if you're doing home offices, probably skip the pictures at people's home office, but any other offices, take lots and lots of pictures. That's going to be helpful for just kind of, remembering things. We actually got at CharTec, or ARC, Alex got a phone call from somebody who was screaming about, how their server room had been left. And so, I was kind of concerned. We pulled up the pictures. We had all the photographs of the last time we were at the server room with pictures of the server room. And then the pictures that they were sending were not, had nothing to do with the pictures that we had taken. And we found that another vendor had been in there setting up somebody's home, like dish network stuff, and had left boxes and routers and all kinds of garbage all over the place. But having those pictures is really important. Got to stay organized and inspect your work. All right, so now we've got that interaction with a customer, right? This is where we're performing that training with those customers on, how to get support. We have some documentation. Now we're going to be doing this, face to face in those conversations. In the, whether you're going to do this on a group standpoint, I prefer, when you can. Take the training room for the day and have blocks of people coming in depending on how many do it in shifts, and you can go ahead and present that training on how you're going to get support, how you're going to use the tools, emails, what those expectations are, and really helping them understand that we are here to serve them. And I think that's really key, right? We're not here just to be the support people and take money, but we're here to make their lives easier. And how can we make their lives easier? Want to make sure that we've got that, any VIPs, make sure that we have that identified. Another one that it's hard to find out sometimes in the beginning in the sales process, but, any of those other gotchas. So is this person, the spouse of somebody? You'll start to find that out when you're there. Maybe they have different names and don't appear, but that's one of those things that can bite you in the neck if you're not really, really careful of, spouses, family members, things like that. But now you can start asking some of those questions and getting to know each other.
And the PA, beware of the MD's PA, who so many people have probably dismissed at their peril, and that's the person that potentially an owner of a business will speak to probably more than their wives, so actually the opinions they form on you as an MSP and the person that they work, that's trying to get hold of, of those guys, the CEO or the real business decision makers, they have the ability to shape that, to shape their thoughts on us as customers, as their suppliers. Sorry.
Yep. And for our American friends, the PA is the personal assistant, right?
Sorry. Yeah.
One thing I would add here is if any presentations you're going to make, I would definitely, meaning if you took the boardroom, I'd definitely keep those things to roughly 15 minutes, and I would personalize them to the end client. So what you're looking to do is mention the software that they use the most, the 10 people in the accounting department are definitely going to perk their ears up when they hear you talking about the software that they use. So if you have a help desk question, you can call this phone number and you can tell us about your fill in the blank problem. So, personalizing these things a bit and not just going in with a check off the boxes training is going to go a long way too, because they're going to notice that you paid attention to them. They're going to know that you know something about their solutions. And if they have any pain points, and they do, they're going to go, okay, cool. I might be able to get that thing that's been, chewing on my neck for a year fixed.
Yeah. And that's where that, in that earlier handoff between the sales and the service was so critical, where sales is going to be able to make sure we have all that ammunition that we need. We're going to have the terminology that we need, the names of applications that we need to, to appear competent. All right. So I think it's a key. Oftentimes I've seen an MSP maybe has even done a decent job getting started, but forget that this is ongoing training. Right, so it's not just when you start them. You need to make sure you're keeping aware of when new employees come in, that you are going to have that ongoing training is really important. And I think we need to make sure that this is it's a time to celebrate. And this is where we're going to send them a thank you letter and a gift. Do you guys do that? You guys familiar with that? What's your thoughts? We do like to do that. We do like to send out gifts, and we do also do with some of our customers on an ongoing basis. We every now and then host events. So I know previously we've done bits of corporate hospitality as well and things like that as well. So, but yeah, certainly for us, we're always grateful for the business that we receive. So we like to show a degree of gratitude for that, definitely. Yeah. And I think, being able to do stuff at a different time, kind of that ongoing side, one thing that I've found to be very successful for us is instead of sending, the holiday / Christmas, whatever cards, we do Thanksgiving cards. And so it's a great opportunity to, give thanks for your customer. So it's kind of a little free tidbit that I found to be really effective. And now is when you also want to go ahead and make sure that you're confirming that first technology business review, right? So we're getting started now in 90 days or 120 days, depending on your on how quickly or how often that you're doing your TBRs. We have a whole different presentation on that technology business review, or just business review, whatever you like to call that. We usually do that based on the the $1,000 of revenue. So for they get one per year for each $1,000 a month of revenue. And so that kind of gives us a good rule of thumb of, how often we need to do it. I'm going to schedule that first one, however, much quicker, because we need to, see how we've done on our onboarding, our initial get going. And then we're going to be setting up, we're going to set those expectations of what we're going to be covering on the TBR. We want to be really careful that we're not using this as a sales opportunity to now sell them once again. I tell my folks the best thing that you can possibly do in that first TBR is to find a problem that the customer has, that you can provide the solution that you don't sell. So I'm always looking for something. Hey, this is what we've identified. That's not something that we do. That's out of our wheelhouse. But I want to go ahead and set up the right interaction for you to be able to get this resolved.
Absolutely. The other thing, I think, from our perspective, the successful organizations that I've worked with and have very much focused things like the technology business reviews with more than one person, with a kind of layered, a number, layered stakeholders, if you like. So actually, an organization might have a fantastic relationship with their account manager, and there might be a really great relationship with the key stakeholder at one organization. But if one of those people leaves, then there's a real problem. So actually, by ensuring that actually some of these reviews involve people at different levels from within the business, a multi-layered engagement, essentially, it does protect the organisation so much more from the prospect of a person at either end leaving. And I'm sure many organisations have had a situation where they felt like they had a great relationship with the technical director or the head of service delivery, and then that person got a fantastic opportunity somewhere else. You wish them well, and then you realise, actually, I don't really know who I need to talk to now. So I think it's really, really important that multi-layered engagement exists.
Yep. And, a TBR is not sending them a bunch of reports. You may need some reports to perform it, but I would highly recommend go on Core, take a look at the last presentation that we did on conducting an effective TBR. I think that would be really helpful for you. And then finally is ask for a referral, right? So when you buy a car, when are you most likely to recommend it to everybody else?
Exactly. Right after you driven off and speeded home and to show your wife the car. So you're definitely excited at the beginning of the relationship, and to put it mildly, you haven't stepped in anything yet, right? Mm-hmm. So you haven't had a flat tire, you haven't broken down, you haven't needed to be towed, and people are following up with you from the dealership and asking you how your car is running within the first couple of weeks, rather than sending you need an oil change a year later.
Absolutely. And so I don't know if you guys are going to have any questions. I think we've actually hit all of the questions that had come in earlier. But I do want to thank you. I hope that this has been beneficial for you folks. And make sure to check out the live VHD. We've got some information. Actually, I think you guys have, don't you have something special for us?
For us, what we're doing is we're going to be waiving all onboard fees for the first 30 days after joining up through CharTec. So basically, it's a pretty
big deal.
Pretty decent savings at the onset. And any questions definitely can go through CharTec and reach both Paul and I if it funnels down that far. And obviously through the screen right now, it's membership@chartec.net. And there's a load of people that can answer your questions and get a ball rolling if that's what you're looking for. So yeah.
Fantastic. And well, for us, just to say, I mean, we're very lucky to have a great relationship, both obviously with CharTec, but also with LVHD on the service desk side. So the deal that what they've suggested is great. What we're actually doing at the moment, cybersecurity is a really, really important. Important thing. We've seen, I'm sure there are stories the world over of breaches that have damaged a number of businesses. So it's something that we're now heavily involved with in supporting a number of our customers. We're actually offering a free breach assessment to any organisation that comes on board with us over the course before the end of the year. So clearly that's a bit of a challenging timescale, but we're really excited to try and assist organisations with making sure that they're as cyber secure as is possible. So again, please contact the guys at CharTec if that's something of interest to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I really appreciate you guys being on here. Membership@chartec.net. You can also, if you have any other questions, account manager. If you're an existing, you wanted to see some of the other webinars or some of those things we referenced in Core. If you're not a member, go ahead and send it to membership@chartec.net or to account manager@chartec.net for your account manager to get access to recordings and some previous recordings. So appreciate it again very much and hope this has been helpful for you guys. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you, everyone.